session currently taking place. 36 minutes currently on the clock for qualifying. When we get to the end of that, we've got a very good race coming up here around Brands Hatch, a track that everyone loves and a track that there goes Piers Stockton going round for a spin. Was he helped round there by Riley Phillips? I wonder. We'll have to look back into that one, but I will bring in the returning Andy McEwen, who hasn't been with us since round one. He's made excuses every time. Andy, how have you been?
I've missed working with you, Chris, that's for sure. I have genuinely been missing my Funcup action, actually, over the last few weeks, but I've had what I think are pretty good excuses. I've been trying to dive into this whole sim racing thing as much as I can and getting involved with as many different series as I can, and I'm very glad that I've done so, actually, because I am relatively new to the world of esports and sim racing. I've been learning a lot over the last few weeks, and the main thing that I've really learned that I rather like it, actually, and especially in the absence of real-world motorsport. But I think into the future, even when we do get back to the real racetracks, this is definitely a world that I want to continue to be a part of. So yeah, I've been continuing my sim racing adventure, but very, very happy to be back the Funcup family again this weekend.
Well, the racing is essentially just the same, isn't it? It's just you're just sitting at home commentating on it rather than being at the track and everyone else is safely at home. So that's the only real difference, isn't it? And you can race anytime, anywhere, from wherever you are.
Exactly. I mean, the one thing I always whinge about endlessly when I'm at a racetrack commentating is that I'm often in a sweaty little wooden box with tiny windows full of spiders. It's all very uncomfortable, not very glamorous at all. And actually doing it from home is the exact opposite. I can sit here in my comfy office chair wearing whatever I want and just generally be a lot more relaxed about it all. So yeah, it has many merits, and as more and more people are jumping on board with it now as well, more and more championships are starting to see the benefits of this kind of competition. It just continues to grow, and the more it grows, the more enjoyable it is to be part of. So yeah, really, really happy with the amount of sim racing I've been able to be a part of, and looking forward to tonight's race. Brands Hatch always produces good racing, especially with the Funcup. Some of the best Funcup races I've had the pleasure of commentating on over the years have taken place at Brands Hatch. Never before, though, at least to my memory, has the Funcup Championship raced on the Grand Prix circuit. So, as ever here with the virtual Funcup series, we like to do things a bit differently, and I'm really intrigued to see how things go tonight.
I was about to ask you what you were wearing this evening, but that is definitely a conversation for another time, isn't it? So, yeah, we will return to that at some other point. Unfortunately for you, the championship is actually very close since you've been away, Andy. We had some brilliant racing. Of course, we started at Alton Park, went to Snetterton and Anglesey. Chris Dawes joined me at Anglesey. It was great to have him along for that one. We have Richard Towler and Riley Phillips tied on points, tied on 202 points. Jay Shepherd closely in chase in 174 points. Then we've got Julian Thomas on 166 and Chris Hart on 164. It's still early in the series, but it's it couldn't be closer out front, could it? Tied on points between Towler and Phillips, and not far behind Jay Shepherd leading a very close fight for third place. But you've commentated on a lot of Funcup, Andy. It can change very quickly, can't it?
It absolutely can. There's a reason that every season it always seems to go down to that last race of the year, and I think this series will be no different at all. It will continue to ebb and flow. We definitely have seen an element of separation here. I think Richard and Riley have been the pace setters, but as with all of the esports stuff that I've been involved with recently, you see drivers that have more experience this kind of thing. They tend to be the fastest out of the blocks. They're the ones that win the races early in the season and build up a nice points cushion. Then as we get through the season, as the drivers get more races under their belts, those that are new to this game actually get better and they get closer to the top and they start winning races and they start taking points out of those early championship leaders. We're only 3 races in, and I think that there are definitely a good half dozen drivers or so that I think realistically put themselves into contention. But yeah, it's been a fascinating battle between those two, hasn't it? Level on points, and had it not been for Richard's issues at the third round at Anglesey a few weeks ago, maybe he would have been clear out in front. But yeah, I don't think anyone's going to run away with this one just yet.
Well, it almost turned into a reverse grid, that race. It was a a really chaotic start to the race, actually, in the first a couple of corners. I don't know if that's a trend at Anglesey. I've never been there. Have you been there many times yourself?
Yes, and early safety cars and early collisions in Funcup race at Anglesey are fairly common. So yeah, it seems like that was a continuation of the real world form by the sound of it.
Well, we've got to make it as real as we can, haven't we? So we're currently on board with Richard Towler, just coming up to the final corner. Very close. Bottom right of your screen shows you just how close that is. 45 thousandths in it at the moment. We'll stay with him as he comes up towards the line and see if he's able to improve on this lap. There's still plenty of time to go if he doesn't and stays the same. So Richard Towler doing a very good job in chase of Riley Phillips. We've currently got Chris Bridle in pit lane, and David Denyer has actually just moved up to third. So we will have a look at David now, just coming through turn number 1 and running a little bit wide there. So whilst you've been away from us, Andy, what have you been up to? Tell us the series you've been covering.
Oh, well, yeah, it's like I say, it's been fairly busy. I've been very privileged, actually, to have been involved in a few really exciting series. So I've been one of the commentators on the Powermax Racing E-Series, which is a series on iRacing, actually, that pits real-world racing drivers against some of the fastest sim racers on the planet. And we've seen some cracking action there. Again, a really close championship battle in that one as well. Drivers rather running away with it, but we've had people like Jason Plato, Tom Onslow Paul, Ricky Collard, James Collado, countless real-world professional drivers who have come into that series and given it a go, really enjoyed it. So that's been a lot of good fun. I also was the commentator for the British Formula 4 E-Series as well, which concluded a couple of weeks ago here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, actually, in a last race championship decider, as I think is law, really, in British motorsport. If you have a final round of the championship on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch, it must be dramatic, it must be exciting, and it must go down to the very last corner of the very last lap of the year. So that was exactly what happened with the Formula 4 eSports series. And yeah, just countless other things, some great charity events I've been a part of too. We're trying to raise some money for the NHS, which we can all agree is very worthy cause at the moment. It always is, but especially given the current climate here in the UK. So that's been really nice to be a part of as well. And yeah, I've been averaging sort of 3 or 4 streams per week, which for someone who at the start of this lockdown period was a complete sim racing virgin, it's been a fairly intense introduction to it. But I don't do things by half. If I'm going to get involved, I'm straight in. And yeah, I've learned so much. It's like a whole new language, really. I thought that I know racing, I know how motorsport works, and I thought it'd be a fairly easy transition over. But the racing is the same, and the people often doing it are the same people that I commentate on in the real world. With the terminology and just the way the races tend to run, they are all subtly different. And the more I've done, the more I've learned about that, and the more I can really appreciate just how much goes into not only competing in these, also putting on the events as well. I as I've said in the past on many occasions, can barely turn a computer on, so I have the utmost respect for the people that are organising these challenges. I know Riley and his father Andrew have been working hard on this one, and yeah, it's astonishing to see the work that does go into producing a sim racing series.
Well, let's find out more about that. We're going to stay with Riley Phillips. He's got Piers Stockton behind. I think he's got Chris Hart ahead. I'm gonna ask Andrew to join us on stream now. Basically, unmute yourself, Andrew, and come in and see if he can tell us about some of the work that actually does go on behind the scenes, because Andrew's not just running the championship with Riley and the server, but they're also doing the broadcast as well. So, Andrew, if you are there, tell us a little bit about. There you are. Tell us a little bit about the. I just wanted to check you hadn't run off, basically, when you heard all that. Tell us about the work that has gone into. Now you've got into the flow of doing things, the routine that you've gone into of running the series each week.
Yeah, we've got into a bit of a routine now, but yeah, we probably need a big shout out to, especially, like people like yourself that helped us with the commentary, but your brother, Dan, set up all the streaming for us and you ran that streaming for us originally, and then Dan showed me how to run it from here, and I upgraded the PCs, so we were able to run it from here, and then so we ran it from here. But yeah, massive, talented brother that you have there, Dan. It did a lot of work putting together, all the sliders for the streaming and putting together some of the streaming stuff, and then I picked it up from there and added in a few other bits and bobs so we can stream dual to Twitch and to YouTube at the same time.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic, wasn't it? It was like many people, just didn't have a lot of work to do for a couple of weeks, and it was a great thing. But what happens each week? How do you go about getting things set up for each round?
Yeah, so a lot of the tracks that we're doing are modified tracks, or they're tracks that they don't come with a core game. So a lot of modifications have to be done to the tracks. Some of them only have sort of 10 or 12 pit spaces because they're not really made for multiplayer use. So you then have to go in and modify the tracks so we can get more pit spaces in there. And also track limits, we need to define all the track limits and put on the track cut software and stuff, so that takes quite a number of hours for each track. If it's a modified track, you have to literally drive the outside of the track and mark that as the boundary, and then mark the other side of the track and mark that as the boundary, and then mark the pit lanes and the pit entrance and the pit exit, and yeah, there's lots of, basically you have to draw the entire track in the race control mechanism, which then can do our penalties and our drive-throughs and knows when a driver's taken a drive-through and all that sort of stuff. So setting up the track is quite a bit of work, and then most of the stuff for the servers kind of cut and paste now, but yeah, just set up all the drivers in the server. We had a little intermission today where we had to reset the server because we had a couple of drivers join that we hadn't had on before, so we just needed to add those to the server. And there's car tweaks, and then setting all the stream software up and putting all the banners up for the stream and changing all that so it's pointing to the right race and all that sort of stuff. So there's a little bit of work that needs to be done every week.
Yeah, I mean, how many hours would you say has gone into this championship?
I'd say that we're probably 5 to 10 hours to set up each race, just to set up each race. And then there's, Riley's done different tweaks to the cars as well and things. So that's still sort of an ongoing thing. And initially getting a lot of the drivers on board, because a lot of them were race drivers, they weren't really sim drivers, so they weren't used to joining servers or adding software and downloading tracks and adding all these things, because we needed each person to make sure they're on the same track and all that sort of stuff. So there's quite a bit of work sometimes getting people up to date. People are getting into the swing of that now as well, so that's definitely helping. But yeah, there was quite a bit of work that went into that as well.
I'll come over to you, Andy, because I'm sure you got a couple of questions as well. But it's almost like what we would see a whole team do when we go to a track to commentate, but all of that work has to be done by just a couple of people.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the point I was making a few minutes ago. This boggles my mind even, and I only understand the basics of what people like Andrew have to do to put on this whole production. But just talking to you before we came live tonight, Andrew, and hearing, the amount of different things, the different plates that you're spinning simultaneously, it makes my head hurt, and I'm not even the one having to do it. So the concentration levels and the knowledge you've got to have about this sort of thing really is astonishing. But it's all kind of worth it, isn't it, when you get to this point now, and the stream's live and the racing is as good as it has been and the support for it has been as good as it has been. It kind of makes all that effort and all of that stress more than worth it, doesn't it?
It does. It's great fun, and having professional commentators on the stream and commentating on it, I think, makes all the difference. It just makes us able to put out such a professional, I think anyway, professional quality broadcast, and that makes the real difference. So yeah, there's been a lot of
these professional commentators are, Andy.
They've gone somewhere else.
I think not.
Back, please?
No, it's great. The knowledge, and the skill that you have and bring to it is different. I've watched Riley races and a lot of other E-series and stuff, and watched their commentary, and it's very much more amateur compared to you guys. So really, really appreciate the support that we've had from everybody to enable us to set it up.
The check's in the post, Andrew. Thank you. That was lovely of you to say. But no, it's involvement with the Real World Championship is fairly well known. This will be my 8th season working with the Real World Funcup Championship. So to be able to see it make the leap to the virtual world has been, on a personal level, actually just really special for me these last few months. So yeah, thank you to you and Riley and everyone who's helped it all together. It's really exciting to be a part of. So thank you.
It's been fun. It's been great. Yeah. Oh, and Richard goes off. Oosh, that was a big one. He wouldn't have wanted to have done that in real life.
That's not the ideal line through Westfield, is it? Our joint championship leader, Richard Tower. That was an interesting approach. Commonplace to make a mistake there, that isn't it, Chris? It's one of the things I'm fascinated to see tonight is how the drivers do handle this Grand Prix layout at Brands Hatch. Because it's, as I made the point, not a version of the track that the Real World Championship was raced at before, and it is actually not that widely used anyway across British motorsport. It tends to be the big international meetings. So I don't think that'll be the last mistake we see out there tonight.
No, it isn't. It's because with the shorter layout, you can see the whole track basically. But with the GP layout, it's a lot of work. I think that has to go into getting the GP layout running, isn't it? And as you said, it's only used a few times a year. But we all know the BTCC goes and uses it for their meetings. But have you done a lot of races where the GP layout has been used?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've worked at a good few meetings that have used the GP layout, and the most common phrase that seemed to be used in my commentaries were, "Oh, and the red flag's out again. Oh, and the safety car's out again. Oh, and there's a car off in the gravel." It's so common to see people making mistakes because they don't have that experience of it. Track days don't tend to run on the Grand Prix circuit. Club level races don't tend to take place on there. So it is a challenge, but that's why the drivers love it. If you ask racing drivers what their favourite circuits are, they're probably going to say Alton Park, Brands Hatch Grand Prix, and maybe Thruxton as well, because they're proper old school circuits. They're unforgiving. If you make a mistake, you're going to be in the barriers. And even in something like this virtual Funcup UK series, you're not going to hurt yourself. And it's not going to cost you any money if you hit the barriers, but it can definitely cost you a chance at the race. So it's, the drivers got to be pretty careful out there, but it's also very high speed. So, the chances of making a mistake are an awful lot higher.
Definitely. I want to use this chance to talk about the calendar, which got released. I'm sure you saw it for the Funcup Championship. It doesn't look like we're very far away now. Just having a look, the provisional calendar came out August the 8th at Snetterton will be the first race provisionally that is going to be used. We're kind of coming up to that phase now, Andy, where real racing is starting to return. Track racing, shall I say? Track racing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's that's what we all live for, isn't it? I think all of the team here tonight, our involvement with racing, that's what we have in common, and we're all very much looking forward to getting back and think back to something vaguely resembling normality. I don't think it's going to be the same. There's no way it can be the same as it was, but I think the first time that I hear those engine notes, I smell those exhaust fumes, and I pick up that microphone, it's going to be a fairly emotional moment, actually, because I live for motorsport and being at the racetrack, and I've gone from spending every weekend of my life at a different racetrack to, I think the last time I was actually trackside was probably November last year. So, it's going to be very special to get back. And the Funcup UK Championship, as you said, have released their provisional calendar, which will start with a double header at Snetterton. It's the first time we've done a double header for a little while in the championship, a 1 hour race and then a 4 hour race. So that's 5 hours of racing plus a qualifying session, a lot of track time there at Snetterton, August the 8th for that one. Then a couple of weeks later, the 22nd of August, we make our debut at Thruxton. And that I'm very excited about because we know how things like the slipstream and that close quarters racing that produces works in these cars. I think Thruxton is going to be something vaguely resembling the Daytona 500 more than your typical Funcup race. That's going to be really, really close. 4-hour race there. September the 12th, the National Circuit at Silverstone, then it all, as is tradition, will come to a head at Alton Park on October the 17th for the national end of season 4-hour race. So, nice to see that not only this championship, but the vast majority now of championships are releasing a provisional calendar that they're pretty confident will actually end up being the schedule for the rest of the season. And, it means we're that one step closer, for most of us at least, to getting back to the racetracks.
And, we've all enjoyed sim racing. A lot of us have enjoyed it for the first time. Anyone who does sim racing is enjoying it more than ever. Where do you see things going when the racing does get back to normal again?
Well, I sincerely hope that sim racing continues to get the love and attention it deserves, because that's what finally it's had for these last few months. People have been left with no alternative if they want to watch motor racing, if they want to take part in motor racing. Sim racing's been the only option. And I really hope that people don't forget about that, because in a way, sim racing is what's got a lot of the motorsport community through these last few months and kept us sane, for the most part at least. And I do hope that it continues to have that support. I definitely think a lot of the drivers will continue to take part in it to a pretty high level, because a lot of the drivers that I've spoken to, right the way up to BTCC or even international level drivers, have all said that it's different, and they wouldn't substitute real world testing with sim racing at all. They're not suggesting that, but they have all said that it definitely helps them feel that they have benefited from being a part of these sim racing competitions. It keeps your eye in, it keeps your racecraft up, and those reactions keep you very sharp as well. So I definitely hope that it continues to enjoy the sort of newfound interest that it's gained over the last few months. And I know I'm definitely, like I say, I'm a converted fan now. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on the sim racing world from now on. And hopefully I'm not the only one.
Can we use sim racing in a different way, do you think, to what we did before? I mean, could we use sim racing to almost do a race on the build up to the Funcup UK Championship, have a virtual race to kind of get the drivers ready for that? Do you reckon that's a format that could work? Because Funcup isn't out every single weekend, so realistically we could put them out for a virtual race the weekend before, and that could be a nice way to get everyone in the in the mood for going and get a bit of practice in.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's no reason at all why sim racing competitions cannot run alongside their real world counterparts. And I think that probably is the future for sim racing, at least of this sort of ilk, involving real world professional drivers. It can work very well, I think, as a supplement to real world championships and winter series as well. I think we'll see a lot of championships, and I know this to be a definite fact as well. Some of the series I've been working with lately are very closely looking at the idea of a winter esports series, which could then offer maybe a prize for the champion being a free entry into a round of the real world championship when it begins again. So I think people have sort of woken up to the idea that sim racing does have a place in the motorsport community in the UK and around the world as well. It doesn't have to be its own entity. You can definitely go hand in hand. And I think that the stronger that partnership gets between sim racing and real world racing, then that's going to be more beneficial for both worlds, really.
And more people can watch sim racing, isn't it? It's something the broadcast can be done at a much cheaper cost. To get a whole camera crew down to Brands for 2 days, get them filming the whole entire championship is great to have, and we love that happening. But with sim racing, we can do that a lot easier, isn't it? And that's something that can happen. So we can film every race live, guaranteed almost.
Yeah, precisely. It is a much cheaper way of broadcasting motorsport, and that's not to say that we don't want real things to be broadcast, but it definitely it is a viable alternative. Let's put it that way, and it's more accessible, honestly, especially to the I say my generation. It's not even my generation anymore, is it? It's the generation before that will come after us now. These real youngsters that are getting into motorsport. This is the way to get them involved. A lot of 9, 10, 11-year-olds, they don't really care that much, honestly, about the real world side of things. Sometimes they don't understand it. Maybe this is a brilliant way of bridging that gap, because what they do understand is video games. They do understand the virtual world, and it absolutely is a great entrance into motorsport. I think for a lot of people, maybe a new way to try and get people involved, especially now more of it is starting to be broadcast around the world to a pretty high level. So yeah, I think the future's bright for sim racing, and like I say, I think its partnership could absolutely benefit the real thing as well.
I really sincerely hope that it does continue, definitely, and I only believe it's going to grow, as you said. But all of us are desperate to see track racing back again. Where is the first gig for you going to be, Andy? Where's the first track that you're going to be back at and back in the booth?
I believe, luckily for me, my local circuit, Alton Park, that's where the first round of the TCR UK Championship is due to take place. So yeah, not too far for me to travel, only about half an hour or so for that first one. But then you know the score. Once we get into August and everything kicks off properly, it'll be up and down that M6 like nobody's business. Every weekend, that sort of becomes my life. But yeah, Alton Park, a nice place for things to restart for me.
I mean, it is gonna be hectic, isn't it? It's gonna be the busiest 4 or 5 months for racing there has ever been, almost.
Absolutely, yes, and it will go on longer than normal as well. I think if you look at the final rounds of things like the BTCC, for example, that's not due to finish until late October or early November even. So although we've had this extended, enforced off season at the start of the year, the next off season we have be rather shorter, really. So there's the winter will be a bit shorter for us, which is definitely good news. But yeah, it's going to be very hectic. And as a motorsport, and yeah, I mean, for us, people who work in motorsport, yeah, then we're kind of looking at the diary and the steam's pouring out of our ears as we try and figure out how we can be in 6 different places at once. But for a motorsport fan, it is heaven, right? Because all you have to do is wake up on a Saturday morning, switch your laptop on, switch your TV on, switch your tablet on, and you can be watching 3 different broadcasts from around the world, all of them top quality motorsport. You're going to have some of these weekends which have got Formula One, MotoGP, World Superbikes, TCC, British GT, all on at the same time. So there's going to be so much motorsport for us to watch and enjoy over that relatively short space of time. And it's going to be a pretty intense season for all involved.
It is. It's going to be absolutely fantastic to be back at tracks again. And I am just actually asking Andrew if he fancies stepping in one more time to have a quick chat with us.
Sure.
Before he's back. Andrew, you've been listening to what we've been talking about, and the virtual world of things. It's never going to carry on at the extent it is at this moment in time. That's something that isn't going to be possible because everyone's going to be busier back at circuits again. But how do you see things carrying on once people are back at circuits again, including Riley and yourself?
Yeah, I really hope we can continue doing a virtual series, and exactly what Andy was saying. I was thinking, the winter break is like the perfect thing, but also, like you said, setting up a race the week before is also just like really good. Yeah, I mean, this is why Riley made this car, was so we could practice tracks, because we don't have an unlimited budget, so running over to Mondello, for instance, in Ireland, or Zandvoort or whatever, you couldn't practice those tracks, couldn't pop out there like a lot of these drivers can actually, and pop over there for some practice. But so this enabled us him to practice these tracks. So yeah, it would be great to have a virtual race the week before the race, or have a winter series. I really hope we can carry on some stuff and grow the virtual racing a little bit, so we can run a few series over the years, and keep them going.
Has it been something that the guys at Funcup have mentioned to you, or is it something that they've been particularly enjoying, seeing the virtual championship running?
They've really enjoyed it, seeing it running, and I think it's really helped keep the pulse of Funcup alive. So yeah, I think Paul and Christian and Roxy have been really happy with the virtual series, and it's given them a lot to talk about, and it's kept all the drivers focused and entertained on Funcup. So I think they've seen some of the value of it. So hopefully they'll see value in maybe doing a winter series or something.
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, I know it's something that off the back of Le Mans, I know the guys at WEC are particularly interested in looking into carrying it on after the success that brought. And I think that was just a great advert for how esports can work combined with, in motorsport. Together the two things can work very well.
Indeed, yeah. You will have to tell us all about Le Mans, because yeah, fantastic. Congratulations to getting on the team there, and 63 million people, tuned in to watch you commentate on the Le Mans official 24-hour virtual race. Must have been fantastic.
I don't know how it happened. I don't know how I was titled on esports expert. There's another Chris McCarthy somewhere with his bags at Le Mans train station, wondering when he's going to get picked up. But yeah, I still don't know how it happened, but it was a surreal experience. And Andy, commentating with Martin for 24 hours has made me ramble on till 6 minutes left in this qualifying section. Basically, I've picked up that habit from him.
You've learnt from the best, though, haven't you? He's Martin is a real talent at filling time when needs be. So it's and I second Andrew's thoughts as well. I know you're probably sick of us talking about you now, but really top job at Le Mans last week. I was saying to you earlier on, I watched an awful lot more of that race than I first intended to because of just how professional the whole thing was. The commentary team, the whole broadcast in general was just top quality, and anyone who didn't watch it, they missed out because it really was as close to the real thing as I think any esports event so far has been. So massively proud of you, and a little bit jealous, not going to lie, but no, it was really nice to see you get that opportunity, mate.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it was. I got to say, it was a surreal experience because we all sat there going, "This might be the only time this ever happens." And when we sat in the chairs to go live, in other words, Martin said to us, we better not mess this up because this is going to be the only time this ever happens potentially. And it was going out everywhere. But that was the surreal experience of it. That we knew that I think it might happen again, but to get that grid again,
yeah, for sure, made history, didn't it?
Impossible, isn't it? Yeah. So. Thank you very much, for all the messages and comments, throughout the race. It helped a huge amount because I've got to say, getting in there and commentating on that was very nerve-wracking. But I think we were in very good hands with Martin and Ben as well. It was a great team they pulled together, and Alan, of course, he jumped in as well and was commentating for quite a bit of it. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience, definitely, and I really appreciate the kind words from both of you. But I suppose we should talk about some lap times.
Too really.
Yeah, we've got 4 minutes left somehow. Has there been any comments coming in? I'm not sure.
Yes, well, that was the other thing I was going to ask Andrew, actually, because before he leaves, as we've mentioned, this is being streamed out in a number of places, and the trouble is I forgot to make a note of the Twitch channel name and the YouTube channel name. So, Andrew, if you want to plug where everyone can watch tonight, because they can also leave comments and ask us questions if they wish to, and really get involved with the broadcast. We do encourage you all to comment and let us know what you're thinking. I just can't remember where they need to go, Andrew, so do remind us all.
So twitch.tv/Phillips Motorsport is the Twitch channel, and then on YouTube it is youtube/c/Phillips Motorsport.
Good stuff. So there you go. They're the two places you need to head over to, and not only watch the stream but get involved with the conversation. And that's really the part of this that I enjoy the most. A lot of people do like to get involved with the chat, and I will be doing my best to keep abreast of all of the comments coming in. And as soon as some do come in, I shall let you know. But no, for the time being, we've got 3 minutes of qualifying. Should we try and commentate for a bit and actually
we've got 3 minutes.
What's going on?
Riley Phillips is on pole. They've been tit-tat for hundredths of a second here between Richard Towler and Riley Phillips. Let's see if Richard can take pole.
That's really been the story of the season, hasn't it? Riley and Richard trading times, trading race wins. Richard's got 2 wins, Riley with the 1, and as we've said, they're equal on points, and they're almost equal on times, Chris, here. Less than a tenth of a second in it. We're on board with Richard now on an out lap from the pit, so he's going to have time at the end of this lap to bang in 1 more fast lap. What do you think? Has he got what it takes to snatch that pole position away from Riley?
Well, we'll find out very shortly. He's definitely got it in him, because either of them could beat the other. Basically, they're that close. They're tied on points, so it's going to be down to a few hundredths as it is at the moment. But Piers in third, David Denyer fourth, and we've got Julian Thomas fifth. It's Chris Bridle in the car today. He is sixth. I don't know if Ed was actually doing the iRacing 24 hour. I think he may have been.
Ed was doing the iRacing 24 hour, yeah.
He was, wasn't he? So he's asleep. Jay Shepherd is seventh. Then it's John Tomlinson, Chris Hart. Chris Walton currently rounds out the top 10. Why don't, Andy, let's go on board with Richard Thaler. I'll hand back to you as he comes across the line.
Yep, so crosses the line then, about to start a lap of the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit and into one of the most fearsome corners in British motorsport. Paddock Hill Bend throws the car into there about 78 miles an hour. The 80 on the apex, drops down the hill again and begins the climb up to Druids, braking just under the bridge there into the right-hander. Goes quite light, then it's very light on the exit, gets a bit of a slide at the rear, runs wide, and he's bailed out of the lap. Of course he has. Just when we started paying attention to him, he makes a mistake and gives up. That, I fear, has probably handed pole position to Riley Phillips, although it's worth pointing out that Piers Stockton is within 0.2 of a second of pole position as well, and Piers Stockton has had some good moments, hasn't he? He didn't score at the first round of the championship, but he's been in the top sort of 4 or 5 in both of the other races, so Stockton in third, also on the pace.
Yes, he is. As I just think we're on board now with Chris Bridle, as he's about to come up to the line, and we'll start what will believe be his last lap. We've only got less than a minute to go now. He's chasing. He's got a car up ahead of him. He's within a tenth of jumping up into the top 5. I don't know, Andy, if this is going to ruin his lap. If it's a little bit of traffic he's got ahead, or if this will actually give him a tow.
Well, if he catches it at the right point, it might help him, but that point is probably in a corner or so's time when they go onto the Grand Prix circuit. At this part of the track, really want clean air, but as he heads down the Cooper Straight, you can see on his Race Logic lap monitor that he's a little bit down on the time that he'd like, a couple of tenths or so off the best, but gets a good exit from Surtees there, and that slower car is doing its best to stay out of the way. That's the 2-on-2 machine there, which is on the left-hand side of the road, so Bridle unfortunately has to go down the inside, and this is definitely going to cost him time through the corner into Hawthorns. This is a really tricky right-hander, full commitment, big bump in the middle, gathers it together. But look at the time that he lost. He was about a tenth and a half off his best going into the corner. It's part of half a second down coming out of it. That's just from going up the inside. And that's going to be a factor in a few minutes' time, I think, Chris, when we get into the race. As soon as you start running side by side around those speed corners out on the back of the track, you lose so much momentum and so much lap time. I mean, he's nearly a second off the pace that he should be on. Just because of encountering that back marker, which handily has split itself into the barriers now, just behind him, with Bridle having already found a way through. But yeah, that's going to be key to watch for in the races. You don't want to be running side by side through those quick right-handers out on the Grand Prix circuit.
And I think that might be it. We've only got a couple of cars to come across the line. Then we're going to go into the interval. So I think that might be a lot, Andy. I think that's everyone pretty much across the line. And it looks like, surprise, surprise, it's going to be Riley and Richard on the front row.
Yeah, less than a tenth in it, though. Piers Stockton third, as I said. He's less than 2 tenths off pole. And then David Denyer fourth and Julian Thomas fifth. So the two Race Logic teammates have got themselves together there. Fourth and fifth on the grid with Ed Bridle at sixth. Jay Shepherd seventh. And Jay Shepherd's another one that's been there or thereabouts, actually, all season. Despite, I'm pretty sure at Alton Park, when we spoke to him earlier in the season, he was telling us all how useless he was at this whole sim racing thing. He's actually been pretty consistent. He's been in the top 5 or 6 in every race so far. So, yeah, he's up there on the pace as well, and looking to try and maybe get that first podium of the season in the 60-minute race, which is coming up for you all very shortly.
It is indeed. So we are going to take a quick break. Before we do, we will remind you of the championship table. So as you can see up the top, we've got Richard and Riley. They are tied on points, 202 points apiece for them. Jay Shepherd, third in the championship. Julian Thomas, fourth. Then it is Chris Hart in fifth place. That battle for third, very close. But any of those three capable of chasing down the top 2 as well. Chris Walton is 6th, and it's Ed Worthington in 7th. Mark Home is 8th, David Denyer 9th, and Steve Walton 10th place. So that is the championship. But away from the championship, what we've seen from qualifying, Andy, shows it's going to be a very close race.
Yes, which it always is, we know, but it's nice to have that sort of reaffirmed with the lap times, isn't it? And I think this is a high-speed enough circuit that the slipstream should keep people nice and close together. I think if you can be within 4 or 5 tenths of a second per lap of the lead pace, then you'll be able to stay with them with a bit of a toe. So it's going to be a close race. Survival will be key in the early stages, I think. It's not uncommon to have early accidents here at Brands Hatch either. It's, in fact, the circuit with one of the earliest averages for the first safety car in the race over the years. So although we won't have a safety car today, there is the chance that might be a few collisions through Paddock, through Druids, through Graham Hill Bend. But if you can keep your nose clean through that first sequence of corners, stay with the lead pack, crucially stay on that lead lap, of course, then you're always in contention to get a good result at the end of the 60 minutes.
Indeed, 60 minutes as well. Plenty of time for things to happen, but plenty of time for things to change as well. The key is really in a 60-minute race, as you've commentated on a lot of them for Funcup, just stay in it. Just get through the first few laps cleanly. Keep yourself in the fight until we get to the end.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we think of 60 minutes as being quite a long race, but by Funcup standards, that's a sprint race. Literally, that's what they refer to the 60-minute races as. They're the sprint with the feature races later on of 4 hours. And as I said, that first round of the rescheduled championship at Snetterton will have a 60-minute sprint race to kick off the season, and then in the afternoon, a proper 4-hour endurance race. So for these drivers, they are used to being in the car for, the best part of an hour at the time. 60 minutes will probably go by pretty quickly, but it's almost an excuse for them, isn't it, to be a little bit more aggressive, to have a slightly higher intensity level about them in the early stages, because you have got less time than they're used to get the job done. It's also not the easiest of places to overtake at this one either. So I do expect that, particularly between Riley and Richard, they've got this championship battle going on as well. They're not going to give each other too much space here in the early stages. It will be a real fight to get through the first sequence of corners in first place, because that clean air is really quite important.
It is indeed. So there you can see we've got the cars starting to. We've got the cars. I can see certainly the cars are starting to line up at the moment, and very shortly we should get underway. I can see, Andy, we're about 90 seconds away from race start now.
Yes, we are indeed. So the drivers hopefully have all got themselves back in their sim rigs or their sim seats or on the sofa, wherever it is they're racing from. Nothing would surprise me with this lot, quite frankly. I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear that Chris Hart's in bed with his steering wheel and pedals, quite honestly. That's the kind of crazy thing he'd do, but they'll all be getting themselves ready to race here, and the nerves will be starting to rise now. I think there's always, can't help it, can they? It doesn't matter what stage they're on at the start of a race, as you watch for those lights to go out, the heartbeat starts to go up, you start to get sweaty palms, the anticipation starts to rise as well, and as I said, the run into the first corner could be absolutely crucial here. Standing start too, which is something that most of these drivers don't have a huge amount of real-world experience at. So, lots of reasons for the drivers to be a little bit apprehensive here about the start of this race. But I'm pumped. I'm ready to get back to Funcup racing again. It's been far too long since I saw these cars out on the track. Last time I was with you guys was the season opener at Alton Park, and if memory serves, that turned out to be a pretty decent race as well. So, I think we're in for another good one here this evening.
Well, we've only got 15, we're just under 20 seconds now, around 15 seconds left on the clock. Andy, we haven't had you here since round one. You are the Funcup commentator. I'm going to hand over to you to talk us through the race start.
Well, I shall do my very best. Let's see if I can remember how this works, shall I? Here we go then. Red lights are on, and we're about to go racing for 60 minutes around the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Round number 4 of the virtual Funcup UK Championship bursts into life. Good start made by Riley Phillips from pole position. Towler tries to go with him in the blue car on the outside line. He can't get alongside the leader, so instead tries to duck in line onto the inside line through Paddock Hill Bend. I think he's held on to second position with Pierce Stockton third, then 2 of the 3 Race Logic cars. And there it is. It's happened immediately. There's a car further back, that's Jay Shepherd, I think, bounces back into the middle of the road. And what did I tell you? The chances of contact through the first couple of corners was always high, and it happened inside the top 6 or so. The bulk of the field have got through, but definitely a couple of drivers in strife before they'd even really got out of the first corner. The expected front runners, though, are all still there. Riley Phillips leads them for the first time. Interestingly, Chris, Richard Towler feeling the pressure here from Pierce Stockton and not at the moment able to go with the race leader.
Not at all. I can tell you, I'm just still getting a couple of things set up my end, Andy, so you might have to kill some time for me.
That's okay. There's not the down the hill they go into Hawthorne then for the first time. And yeah, Riley Phillips definitely getting away. But, well, look at this battle. The second, Piers Stockton has gone through ahead of Richard Towler. So Towler is down to third position now. He's got the two Race Logic cars behind him of Julian Thomas, David Denyer, in fact, ahead of Julian Thomas. In grid order, Denyer fourth, Thomas fifth, then Ed Bridle is sixth, Chris Hart is seventh. Is definitely a driver I expect to see up there fighting for the race win today. Look at the gap that Riley Phillips has got. He's 1.2 seconds clear as they head through the left-hander, the slightly cambered left-hander at Stirling's for the first time, and approach the end of what has been a dramatic opening lap of racing. Tomlinson, I can see, has just picked up a place as well ahead of Chris Walton in ninth position. Out of clear ways we go, though, for the first time. Phillips, the gap ever growing as Richard Towler tries to get this second place away from Piers Stockton. He's up the inside line as they cross the start-finish line. Lap number one is in the books. Riley Phillips leads, but it's side by side for second. And Richard Towler is on the inside line this time through Paddock Hill Bend. He's late on the brakes. Oh, he's off! Richard Towler's off into the gravel track. The joint championship leader is off the road. We're on board with him now. I don't think made serious contact with the barriers, but he's dropped right down into eighth position, just ahead of Jay Shepherd, actually, who was involved in that first quarter skirmish. In fact, through goes Jay Shepherd's a ninth position for Richard Towler. Big drama for the joint points leader. 2 races in a row. He had a connection issue at Anglesey last time out, which meant that he had to start from the back of the grid and spent the rest of the evening trying to get himself back into contention. Eventually finished in 4th place. But he is in even bigger trouble here in a way because the car could have damage. He's a long way down the field. At the time, his big championship rival, Riley Phillips, is scratching away in the lead.
Well, we're just, I believe, going to go on board with Julian Thomas now, who has just dropped down to 4th place. Had just a slight bit of contact there with Chris Bridle, but back with it now. And you can see this is just allowing the top 5 to escape. So already a little bit of drama on the opening lap, and then once again going through Paddock Hill Bend onto the second lap, just losing the car there we saw, and buried in the gravel was one of the drivers. But we're on board with Julian Thomas. He is sat in 5th place now. He's got Chris Bridle ahead of him, the top 5 all evenly spread out, and then we've got 3.5 seconds back to John Tomlinson, who is in 6th, and then Stephen Fern behind that. Then we've got Jay Shepherd, Richard Towler and Chris Hart rounding out the top 10.
To see what Richard Towler's laps are going to be now, though, because I didn't see that I saw his excursion into the gravel trap from. I didn't see whether he made the barriers, but had damaged the car. I wonder, well, in the background, I can see him gaining some ground, actually. He's trying to get 8th place away from Jay Shepherd here, and Chris Hart is not far from the leader. So Richard Towler into Paddock Hill, and he's going to go 7th, in fact, gets past all of them. So that probably answers my question. The car appears to be handling well. Far behind John Tomlinson, and I suppose, Chris, if you're going to have a moment like that, do it early. The start of lap 2 is a much better time to go off the road and lose ground than the start of the final lap. He's left himself the best part of the hour to get himself back into contention for a really good race. Whether or not he can get a race win awaits to be seen. That I think will take some doing.
Yeah, we can see Richard Towler here with Jay Shepherd behind. Oh, Jay Shepherd there just getting a little bit out of shape as they came through Surtees. He has Stephen Fern behind and Richard Towler. So basically exactly the same situation we had as Anglesey. Drama for Richard Towler on that occasion at Anglesey. It happened before the race had even started. But Richard Towler now on a recovery straight away. He didn't do too bad at Anglesey when he had to recover. Managed to get through to 4th place in the end. So he's got plenty of time to do it, Andy. That is the key. And Richard Towler has been put in this situation before. And he was a lot lower down at Anglesey and a lot further back when he had to start his recovery. So I'd say he is now one to watch throughout the race. He is, if I had to take a guess, 10 seconds back from Riley Phillips, something like that. He's got John Tomlinson ahead. We'll jump on board, shall we, with Richard Towler as we come down towards the final corner. Ahead of him is going to be John Tomlinson. He is around just under a second ahead. So on this lap even, we could see Richard Towler going for a move on John Tomlinson.
Yeah, I think that might well happen. They're going through Paddock Hill Bend now and dropping down the hill. And yeah, he's only a few car lengths behind the Race Logic machine now. He's really gapped Jay Shepherd and Stephen Fern behind him. So Yeah, Towler is almost there now, but he's got to choose his moments here. It would be foolish of him for a rash move. He's got to be patient here. And yeah, as you said, things have not gone well at the start of the race. They could have gone an awful lot worse. It's still inside the top 10. He's still got a good amount of time to gain some of these positions. And as we saw at Anglesey a few weeks ago, he definitely can do it. He also took the fastest lap worth an extra 2 points, although he finished fourth. Same amount of points as if he'd have finished third. He's about to take 6th position here in the race. Now, I think the outside of the race logic machine with John Tomlinson. This is the wrong side of the road, really, into Hall making a move. So John Tomlinson let him go. I think he did into the right-hander. Oh, Tyler sideways into the corner, but he has gone through and back into 6th position, and now needs to get his head down because he's about best part of 5 seconds now behind Julian Thomas in fifth. There's no slouch. There you can see it's the entire distance basically between the exit of Westfield and the entry to Sheen Curve, separating Richard Towler from Julian Thomas, who's only then a second and a half behind Ed Bridle and David Denyer. So the podium is definitely within sight here for Towler, but it'll take a good lap now, even at the rate at which he's able to lap and maybe close on that group. He can wrap something there.
Well, just having a look, we're going to go now and have a look at Chris Bridle. We'll have a look at him in just a second. We'll go on board with Chris as well, because he at the moment is chasing David Denyer, who is just up the road. Half a second up the road is David Denyer from Chris Bridle, who has had a very good start to this race now. Chris, of course, his brother Ed was racing in the iRacing Le Mans 24 Hours. We are on board with him now as he comes down towards Graham Hill Bend. He could be potentially looking at a move on David Denyer on this lap. That said, Andy, is Chris going to play the long game with David Denyer? Because David Denyer is showing pretty good pace. He's 3 seconds back from Piers Stockton. Speaking of Piers Stockton, he is dropping back from Riley Phillips ever so slightly. Piers has had a pretty unfortunate run of things in the championship so far, both in the UK and European Funcup Virtual Series. So we'll hope for some better luck for him this time. But this is a very good fight for third place. Looking back at the times lower down, it looks as if Jay Shepherd is very close to making a place as well. So we will check in with Jay Shepherd now, as he is actually battling away with of John Tomlinson. So we'll check in with him. He's just got John Tomlinson up the road. Why don't we go on board with Jay Shepherd as they come up to the final few corners of the lap.
On board now, then it all gets a wheel on the grass turning into Sterling. That is not a good idea, but he gathered it together. Didn't actually lose that much time to Tomlinson in front. Eddie Towler is gapping them. He's the best part of 1 3/4 seconds now up the road from these two. Shepherd heads out of Clearways through Clark Curve. He's in the slipstream now of John Tomlinson. About 4/10 separating these two drivers, scrapping over 7th place. And Tomlinson still needs to defend into Paddock Hill Bend. Shepherd not quite close enough to attack just yet. Can you see, though, from these on-board pictures, how much the car is moving around in the braking zones, particularly into places like Paddock Hill Bend, where it's bumpy, it's off camber, it's over a rise. The back of the car is trying to step out behind Jay Shepherd. He's handling it well and closing in on Tomlinson so far on this lap. And into Graham Hill Bend. It does worry me, though. He's almost like he's using the grass on the entry to the corner to get the car turned in, because that's twice now in half a lap that he's entered a corner with the right rear on the grass and he sort of slid his way through the turn. It's working quite well for him. They closed in on Tomlinson, back onto the Grand Prix circuit they go again. With 10 minutes now elapsed in the 60-minute race, battle for 7th is definitely igniting as John Tomlinson, for the first time really, is having to defend. Look at the way the Shepherd closes in the toe. Jinx to the inside. That was a really late move. Really surprised John Tomlinson there, who thankfully saw him coming. Left the door open with his contact on the exit. Offers John Tomlinson into the barriers. It looked as though that was going to be a really clean move. They just ran out of space on the exit of the corner, though. And unfortunately for Tomlinson, in the barriers.
Yeah, really unfortunate stuff. You could just feel the contact being made there and car got out of control. And unfortunately for Tomlinson, he is now dropping down the field. There is another close battle going on just up the road, and we've had another addition to this battle as well. Let's go and check back in with the Bridle Denyer battle, which is now Denyer, Bridle, and Julian Thomas as well. Julian Thomas just behind, making this a three-way scrap, as here comes Bridle, now trying to dive down the inside of Denyer into the opening corner. Contact made, and that's Denyer off into the gravel. Just a slight bit of contact there as Bridle made the move. Did get fully alongside, but there just didn't seem to be enough space for the two of them to get round in one piece. And Denyer now dropping back into 5th place, Andy.
Race logic cars must have big targets painted on the back of them, because that's 2 of them have just been fired off the track in half a lap, isn't it? Because John Tomlinson went off down at Hawthorne, and now poor old David Denyer at Paddock Hill Bend. But that was just an aggressive move from Chris Bridle there, and a valid one as well. That's one of the best places to overtake at Paddock Hill Bend. And unfortunately, a little bit of side-to-side contact made, but it hasn't delayed Denyer awfully. He's still within a couple of seconds of these two now. But may well be that Bridle is now able to start getting away. He's 4 seconds behind Piers Stockton, who is the best part of 4 seconds behind Riley Phillips, actually. So those gaps are all sort of going out. The gap that is coming down, though, is the one between this trio of drivers and that car there in the background of Richard Towler. The Dark Blue Machine in 6th position is now only 3 seconds behind Denyer. And of course, he will have been very pleased to see it all kicking off in front of him, because the more that these drivers trip over each other, he will close in on them, and the better his chances of stealing a podium out of this.
Yeah, well, it's starting to all break up now, isn't it? You can see between the times, the top 10 have spread themselves out now quite a bit. That's not going to last for long, I don't think. We've got Julian Thomas here trying to close down Chris Bridle. Of course, David Denyer now a couple of seconds back after that contact was made into this corner, Paddock Hill Bend, just a lap ago. And it's going to be Julian Thomas's turn to try and be one of the Race Logic cars that can actually stay in one piece on the circuit. But if Julian Thomas, Andy, is to start battling with Chris Bridle again, then David Denyer might be able to return for some revenge.
Well, Denyer is closing in again, actually, because that gap was over 2 seconds between Denyer and Thomas. It's now under 2 seconds, so he's catching his teammate anyway. And yeah, you're absolutely right. If they start battling once more in front of him, then he's going to get even closer. But I don't think this one's done with just yet. Ed Bridle there through 70s. David Denyer throwing the car into the left-hander, and he gained about 3/10 doing that. So it does almost seem that, contrary to what any professional racing driver will tell you about driving a racing car, the more sideways you get these things, the quicker they seem to corner, because those that are really pinging them into the turns, especially those low-speed hairpins like Druids, Sturzies, for example, that does seem to be the best way of getting the cars through the turns. And David Denyer, absolutely closing on Julian Thomas, Richard Towler closing on a lot of them. The battle is, I think, about to start heating up very, very shortly.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, just checking in with Richard Towler, all of this battling is just making his job of recovering through the field a little bit easier, isn't it? He can now see 3rd place, and 3rd place is only about 5 seconds away, isn't it? So with 45 minutes to go, in all due respect to the guys ahead, you'd have to say Towler could make those 3 places fairly comfortably. Where it goes from there, well, only time will tell. But Richard Towler, it's going to take a few minutes to do it, quite a few minutes, but he can now see 3rd place, and I don't see any reason why he won't make those 3 places in the next part of the race.
Absolutely. And 3rd place is worth 60 points, so he would only be scoring 10 points less than Riley Phillips. So, a 10-point deficit going into the next round wouldn't really be the end of the world. It would certainly be a bigger deficit than he would have liked. But, not a bad image repair job really here for Richard Towler. If he keeps the performance going, he's gained another few tenths that previous lap as well as he slides the car down through Graham Hill Bend. We're right on board now with the man who had a share of the championship in the race, but we don't know exactly what happened going into Paddock Hill Bend. We might hear from Richard after the race. He'll be able to shed some light on it, but he was going for second on the inside of Stockton, and next thing you know, Richard's going backwards into the gravel trap, and as Chris was saying earlier on, for the 2nd week in a row, has left himself with some real work to do here. He's almost now getting a whiff of that slipstream from David Denyer in front of him. If he can gain another half a second or so, which he should quickly, then you will get the benefit of the toe and then the gap. This is something you definitely see in Funcup racing quite a lot. Once they get that slipstream, the last bit of the gap disappears very quickly. Jonathan Hone there disappearing stage right as he had a moment coming out of Westfield corner, but he gets Truman's car back on the road. He's running down in 11th place, but he's just got a lap down to the cars running inside the top 5.
Yeah, well, great. Oh, there you can see really sliding the car there was Richard Towler as he came through Sterling's, but great on board we're getting here on this lap. You can really see the red mist come over Richard Towler now. From racing experience, albeit in go-karts, when you are chasing back through the field and you get that sense, start picking up the toe from that driver ahead, you just start taking risks that you usually wouldn't if you were, say, in all on your own or leading the race. Look at that slide from Richard Towler as he comes through Paddock Hill Bend. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And the gap is coming down, isn't it? It's just under 2 seconds now. I say coming down, and in fairness to Denyer, it hasn't come down a huge amount over the last half a lap, but Richard Towler is certainly closing in over the last few laps. And on a very good lap as well. You can see in the little race logic box that he is on a personal best lap for this race. Let's move somewhere else, shall we, and check in with some of the other drivers and see what's going on a little bit further down. So we've got Jay Shepherd in 7th. John Tomlinson is in 8th. Why don't we go to John Eiley? He is in 9th place. We've got a battle for 9th going on here, Andy, as well.
Yeah, John Eiley with Stephen Fern not far behind him. So I think, I'm not sure whether Eiley has just gone past. I think he might have just overtaken Stephen Fern because I seem to recall Stephen was running in 9th not long ago. But yeah, they come out of Surtees now with only a second or so between them. John Eiley is looking pretty rapid here, actually, just slightly quicker than John Tomlinson at this stage. So yeah, John Eiley, who's only been in the points in one of the 3 races so far. I have to say, I can't remember whether he was with us for the first round back at Alton Park. I think he might have been, though. So he's had a rather inconsistent season so far. He'd love to get himself a bit further up inside the top 10. He's certainly gapping Stephen Fern pretty quickly. And he is only about 10.5 seconds or so behind John Tomlinson. Lots of dust. That's the Truman's car returning to its natural habitat, which is the barrier. That's the second time in the last lap and a bit that it's been off at this particular part of the circuit. And I think it's fair to say Johnny Hode, very rapid driver in the real world, is maybe just struggling to get to grips with that car and had a few little moments over the first nearly 20 minutes of the race already. Worth pointing out as well, Chris, for those who are new to the series, that unlike a lot of other sim racing championships, it's not a fixed setup in these cars, is it? The drivers are allowed to tweak the setups if they like. So it may well be that some of the drivers who have less experience with the car and the Assetto Corsa sim as well, maybe they haven't quite found the setup that best suits them just yet.
No, there's a lot to it, definitely. I imagine, I know Andrew will tell us this if he is able to jump in, but Riley does a lot of work on setup, and all the other drivers have to do exactly the same, because you can only practice so much. You can only get your car to the track so much, and when you get there, when you do a track day, there's a lot of red flags. So sometimes you get hardly any time in at all. You can do all day in this car on Assetto Corsa, and that means you can change the setups as many times as you want to. So unlimited setup time, unlimited track time is something everyone would love in racing. That's what you get in sim racing. So people will find the best setups they can. I learned a lot of things last week. Oh, there we go. Sorry. I learned a lot of things last week, but one thing I did learn is that people sell setups in sim racing as well. Up to $2,000 you can make from selling setups. So yeah,
that's some serious money can be made from making these cars go quickly. And one driver who I know has been throwing some interesting things at his setup is Richard Towler, and he's been doing some things to his car that a lot of people have said shouldn't work. They clearly are there, because he's going quickly enough to catch David Denyer. He then hit two clearways. So Richard Taylor on board with him now. In fairness, he backed off going down the pit straight to let David Denyer back through, and now he's going to execute a clean overtake. So Taylor into fifth position. But yeah, he did all of the hard work in catching David Denyer, went for a move on the inside into clearways, which is not a typical overtaking opportunity, and we saw why, because contact was made. Denyer did a really good job to save it, and Towler eventually, half a lap later, is able to do the job a bit more cleanly. But by backing off and letting Denyer back through, they've lost a good few seconds to Bridle and Thomas in front of them. So that gap is now 5.5 seconds. Thomas in fourth and Towler in fifth, who of course still hasn't yet shaken off David Denyer, who would quite like to get his fifth place back.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. There you can see Towler just up ahead of him at the moment. Brilliant stuff from Towler. So that's one down. There is a couple more up, but that move, as you saw anyway, Andy. Clearly, I wasn't looking, but it's lost him quite a bit of time, isn't it? Because now he has 5 seconds ahead to Julian Thomas. So we thought that he might be able to clear the 3 cars at a reasonable pace, but his effort now to get anywhere near a podium has just become a little bit more difficult.
The initial contact clearly lost him time, but then he backed off, as I said, to let Denny back through. So that's what really cost him time. He's about 1.4 seconds off the base on that lap, but he has now gone through, and Towler will start getting his head down. He's already gained about half a second just in the second half of that previous lap on Julian Thomas ahead. You can see the timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen, the gaps between all the different drivers. Riley Phillips still leading the way as we are now 22 minutes through the race, and he's nearly 8 seconds clear of Pierce Stockton. So Riley is not going to be beaten easily here. Ed Bridle is a further 4 seconds back and not shaking off Julian Thomas. It looked for a moment as if Julian was going to be dropped by Bridle, but it's Chris Bridle, isn't it, in that car? So Chris not able to get that gap above about 1.25 seconds or so. And Towler just under 5 seconds behind now in fifth. Denyer sixth, Shepherd seventh, John Tomlinson is in eighth, John Eiley ninth, Stephen Fern rounding out the top 10. Also, the last car still on the lead lap. And of course, that's the other thing that could come into play here for the race leaders. Lapped traffic. It's not that long a lap, and so there is the chance that one or two drivers who have had issues in the early stages or are a little bit off the pace will go multiple laps down. And each time the leaders catch those lapped cars, there's always the potential for things to go wrong, isn't there? In any form of racing, especially endurance racing, especially in one-make endurance racing, where you don't have that natural speed advantage over cars maybe running in different classes. So it can sometimes be tricky to get past those back markers cleanly.
Yeah, well, just going a little bit further up the road, back markers always a big thing, isn't it? And I think particularly with a track like this, it is hard to overtake when you get to, I think we all know the certain area of the track where it can be a little bit hard to overtake once you get to Hawthorns. It looks like Chris Hart has just come back out, did get a message through to say that he had gone into the pits. He's back out again, and he's got a nice view of the battle for third place. He's got Julian Thomas here trying to chase down Chris Bridle just ahead. I believe we've had some new camera angles added in for this race. I don't know if we've been seeing them so far, but we'll try some of those out in the second half of the race if we haven't already. But this is your battle for third place.
Yeah, that rearward facing one I'm a particular fan of, actually, looking out underneath the rear wing of these Funcup cars. That's a pretty cool view. We were watching there from Julian Thomas from Chris Bridle, actually, back to Julian Thomas, and then Chris Hart right behind. You mentioned Chris had just pitted. I think he's just been in for one of those protein shakes that he's been using. He takes his pre-race preparation very seriously, does Chris Hart. He takes most things in life very seriously, and he maybe just needed to top that up. That's why he's been in the pit lane. He's back out on track again now, though, and a similar pace to the cars on the lead lap, but not the speed that we saw from him earlier in the season. I remember that first race of the season at Alton Park. Of course, he was in contention to win it, wasn't he? In that battle with Richard Towler and the pre-season test event we did at Zandvoort, he was a contender for the win, and it just hasn't really worked out for him this weekend. He's down in 12th place. Lap down. He's on the same lap as Johnny Hone, so I don't know how far behind the Truman's car he is, but he might be able to squeeze into 11th. But yeah, for the time being, Chris Hart in the Domino's car, a car that has won the championship in recent years, and for the last 3 or 4 years has been a contender for the championship in the Funcup UK Championship. I'm sure we're going to see that car back at the pointy end again later on in 2020. And Big Note finds himself languishing 1 lap down in 12th place.
Yeah, well, we've got this battle for third still going on. This is probably the closest battle on circuit, which is still Julian Thomas versus Chris Bridle. We're in the stage of the race we usually get to in Funcup, Andy. I say that from my experience now of doing the virtual Funcup series, where things it's almost like half time, isn't it? We have a very hectic start to the race. This is our half-time break, and then it all kicks off again in the latter stages of the race.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all races of this sort of length will hit a point at which the drivers are into a rhythm. Everyone's more or less in the position they should be in. 1 or 2 exceptions, Richard Taylor being the obvious one in this race, still with some progress to be made. But yeah, the drivers have to get into this rhythm, because that's what endurance racing is all about. You can't just go hell for leather, smashing every apex curve, locking the brakes into every corner, because the car won't make it to the end, and you won't make it to the end without making a mistake. So yeah, everyone settling into a rhythm. They found their natural pace now, but as we know from the Funcup, that doesn't last, because we get towards the end of the races and things get close. Strange things happen that mean that we end up with really close finishes and maybe some slight surprise winners as well, coming towards the closing stages of the race. And over recent years in the Funcup, the racing and the finishes have been arguably closer than ever, really. I mean, it's not at all uncommon to see races decided by less than a couple of seconds, less than a second even, sometimes in the real world. It's something like 23% of all Funcup UK races have been decided by less than 2 seconds, which, when you consider the average length of a race is about 4 hours or so, it goes to show just how competitive things can be. So those of us who have been following the championship for a while know that you never take your eyes away from a Funcup race, because there's always a twist or a surprise that's sort of lurking not far around the corner.
No, it really isn't. And just round the corner, as we can see, is Julian Thomas still. He is just trying to chase down Chris Bridle. I'm going to see if we can grab Andrew in for a quick chat while we are in this little intermission of the race, just to see how Riley has been preparing. Of course, he is the father of Riley Phillips, and just going to bring him in now to see the calendar has been released, Andrew. How is Riley? Is Riley now started? I'm sure he's been using sim racing to prepare for Funcup, but has he now particularly been trying to use sim racing to prepare for that first race back at the track?
I think it's kind of normal for him at the moment. He's been doing a lot of sim racing. He did the Le Mans 12 hours with his with a team called Wingers, and his teammate who's Schaffer, his last name, Leandro Schaffer, which they won. They won that 12-hour race. So and he's been doing a lot of DTM racing as well. And yeah, obviously we got the European series and the UK series that we're running for Funcup. So fair amount of racing going on.
And how excited are you for the first round back?
Yeah, very excited. Yeah, it's a new team for us this year, so we've done one test. We were lucky enough to get a test in at the beginning of the year, just when they announced it that day, actually, closing everything down. So we managed to do one test session with the team. So yeah, we're very excited to go out and do the first race with a new team.
And any tracks in particular that Riley's looking forward to going to? What about Thruxton?
Yeah, Thruxton's going to be a real interesting track, because it's so fast and long. It's going to be such a bump fest down there. I think everyone's just going to be in one long drag train. It's going to be impossible to get away from anybody, so it should be really interesting. Yeah,
I think it certainly will be. And just going back to what I was asking before, how does Riley use the sim particularly to prepare for a race? Would he do practice races, for example, or how would he try and get things prepared for that race in the rig?
Yeah, he'd certainly go online. Well, not online, on the sim. We're lucky enough to have the Race Logic VBox sim pack, so it's a lap timer basically that you'd use in the car, exactly the same. That gives us exactly the same data, readouts and everything, and gives you, all the throttle, brake, and combined G figures and all that sort of very intricate data basically, and we can compare that exactly with onboard laps. So he can compare his onboard laps and then try some stuff out on the sim and brush up and look at where he's missing things. Basically, if you analyze the data, you can see where you're coming into the corner and then you're having to wait too long to get back onto the throttle or whatever, or you're not quick enough off the brake and things like that. So then he can try and practice that in the sim to get in the rhythm of the track. So when he goes there, he's in the rhythm of the track, and obviously it feels a bit different in the real car, but I think it certainly works for him that all of last season, they were all new tracks to us, but he can turn up and he's on the pace within the first few laps, and one of the fastest drivers there, so it certainly works for him.
And tell us about setup, because I heard a lot about the work that goes into setup last week, and the money people can make from it, because how much would you pay an engineer to come and set up your car? So it's valued money, but how much time and effort goes into getting a setup ready for a car on Assetto Corsa?
Well, yeah, it's a lot of work on Assetto Corsa, and the software doesn't match exactly to the car, which is a shame. But that's the way that the physics engine has to be programmed. So yeah, there's a few things that don't match the car basically. So you have to fiddle around and try and get it to then handle in the same way as the car. And we're still learning a lot about setting up the real car itself and what you can do with that. But it's a big factor, yeah.
And it must be good for you, having started out at Wilton Mill, where I started, to see, or to have raced there anyway in karting, and to have won championships there, to now be in Funcup must be nice for you to see.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be in cars, and yeah, Riley, there was a lot of talk at the time of like, people won't look at you until you've transitioned in the cars, and a lot of kart people can't transition into cars, and it's a big thing. But yeah, Riley just took to it like a natural, and maybe that was the sim racing that helped that as well. But his first race, he had his English exam on the Friday, so we couldn't even turn up to Friday practice. We turned up in, well, they have quali in the morning, don't they, Andy? But it's not really qualification, it's just sort of 50-minute tryout. But that was his first time in the single seat race car. Hadn't been allowed in it before that. At 16, went out. I think there was a lot of teams. There's like 32 cars on the grid. There was like 80 something drivers, and he was 8th fastest out of all those drivers. First time in the single seat race car at 16. So it was pretty mega, yeah.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Well, I'll let you go back, because you've got a race to direct, essentially. So I'll let you go back and get back to that, because we have got just behind. We've got Richard Towler. He's closing in now, Andy, isn't he? I think we're about to have a battle develop for not only 4th but 3rd as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like we said, isn't it? That the get through this middle part of the race, things calm down a bit, and then they build up quite nicely to a bit of a crescendo at the end of the race. So yeah, it's what we predicted. It's almost like we've seen a few of these races now. We kind of know what to expect. So yeah, Richard Towler, he's taken a good 3 to 4 seconds out of Julian Thomas over the last 10 or 12 minutes or so. And as we can see here, we're on board with Richard, working hard at the wheel of his Funcup machine. Comes through Clearways and Clark Curve to finish another lap. Only 1.5 seconds behind Thomas, who's 1.4 seconds behind Ed Bridle. Look at the lap times. Towler is quicker than Thomas by almost a second on that previous lap. So at that rate, should be with Julian by the end of the lap, and he's also lapping about half a second or so quicker than Ed Bridle in front. So yeah, the gaps here definitely starting to shrink. We are setting ourselves up, I think, for a really, really good race. It's been an entertaining race so far, right from the word go. Ed Bridle agrees with us, by the way. He's awake now, first of all. So good evening, Ed. Glad to hear that you're back with us again after what I'm sure was a much needed rest after your Le Mans exploits. But he's watching online, says it's been a great race so far. And Rocket Raymundo says that Chris Hart's got his sim seat set up in the bar, which, like I said, it would not surprise me at all. It might explain why he's a little bit off the pace, but Chris, bless him, still really enjoys his racing. quite as seriously as he normally would. But this battle here for third place is definitely about to start getting more serious. Chris Bridle being caught by Julian Thomas, who is being caught by Richard Towler, and they're all only 3 seconds behind Pete Stockton as well. They're quicker than him, I think they might be. So forget a battle for third; it could become a battle for second before the end.
Yeah, I was just about to say that it's not a battle for third. This is it. It's a battle for second, because you can see if we go back to Chris Bridle now. If we go on board with him, he can see Piers Stockton now. He's only 3 seconds back from him, and Riley Phillips is 16 seconds, 17 seconds to make that up the road. So Riley Phillips has this in the bag. Unless he throws this into the gravel, he's got this one in the bag. So it's going to be a fight for the last 2 places on the podium. Now it's going to be who joins him on the podium, and there's 4 or 5 drivers in the fight for it.
It was a Funcup race that first taught me you never say things like, oh, so-and-so's got this in the bag, because I got assaulted by Zoe Wenham once in a paddock because I said that their car was going to win the race and it didn't, and I left, I think it was Snetterton that day, with a dead arm as a result. So I've learned, don't say that, because you put the mockers on them well and truly. But at the moment, Riley is doing quite well, isn't he? He's 14 and a half seconds up, and not the kind of driver, touch wood, to make many mistakes. So he is looking good out in front. But anyone's guess what's going to happen behind him. We're on board with Bridle now. Then Chris Bridle in third position. Brother Ed watching on, cheering him on here, and probably asking him why he's losing so much time to Julian Thomas and Richard Towler behind him. But as Towler has got closer and closer to Julian, it's almost like it's spurred Thomas on, and he's starting getting quicker as well. So because that gap between Bridle and Thomas was pretty static a couple of laps ago. Richard Towler arrived on the case. Through Westfield then goes Chris Bridle, and that's the real battle behind. Look, because Julian Thomas is having to start watching his mirrors now as he tries to keep Richard Towler behind, and Towler really must make some progress here. He's going to lose some points to Riley Phillips. That much seems almost inevitable. Best he can hope for here is try and limit the damage that his co-championship leader is doing to him in this one.
If I'm Julian Thomas now, I'm just going to let Richard Towler go. And let him drag me up to Bridle and potentially Piers Stockton as well. So I wouldn't be surprised here if Julian Thomas makes this very easy. There you can see he's pulling over, and Richard Towler is just going to go through now. So sensible driving that from Julian Thomas. He's thinking of the next 20 minutes of this race now, and without losing any time whatsoever, he's just let Richard Towler go. And now he can try and stay in the tow and let him drag him up to the back of Bridle.
Tell you what, that's twice in this race that we've predicted something correctly. We're on a roll tonight. You're absolutely
there we go.
Didn't make life difficult at all for Richard Towler. And Julian's an experienced driver. He knows that. He's won the Funcup Championship a few times in the past with Race Logic, and really through an awful lot as a driver. He came into the team as almost the baby of the team, teammates with Nigel Greensall and Jochen Ritter, both of whom have had years and years of international race experience, and Julian was very much their protege, and this was 7 or 8 years ago that they started working together, and over time Jochen left the team, Nigel left the team, but Julian stuck with them, and he is now Team Race Logic's team leader. And he leads that team with great wisdom, and he is a really great mentor for some of the new drivers they've got racing with them now, people like John Tomlinson and David Denyer, to really learn from. And that was sensible stuff there from Julian Thomas, because now, if he can stay with Richard Towler, they both have the potential to catch Ed Bridle, and they all have the potential to catch Piers Stockton, who again, over the course of the last lap or so, has dropped another half a second to Bridle. So a few things to watch out for here. I think if Towler catches Bridle, he might be in a similar situation where it's in Bridle's best interest almost not to battle him, not to hold himself up, because if he lets Towler go, there's a good chance they could all catch Stockton in second. Yeah,
well, we can see if we go to Bridle now, we can see looking back from him that Towler is getting closer and closer. Thomas not too far back from that either. Bridle is keeping a good gap to Piers Stockton, but just behind. It seems only a matter of time now before Towler catches. What does Bridle do? Let's try and get a third prediction in a row correct now here, Andy. Does Bridle do the same thing? Does he let Towler go and then try and drag him up to Piers Stockton? or a little bit out of shape there from Towler, but does he do the same thing? Or, 20 minutes on the clock, does he think, no, I'm going to just try and defend the podium place here?
Well, that's the thing. We are now into the final third of the race, so there's a risk here, isn't there, that Bridle gives Towler third place, and then they don't catch Pierce Stockton. Now, I for what it's worth, I think Towler does have the pace to catch Stockton. He probably could take Bridle with him, but is that a risk that Bridle is willing to take? I think a lot of it will depend on the next lap or so. If Towler arrives all of a sudden on Bridle's rear bumper with obvious pace, and it looks as though it's kind of only a matter of time before he goes through, then yeah, I think Bridle probably should let him go. But as we're seeing at the moment, Towler isn't exactly reeling him in visibly. Oh my word, that was a crisp moment there with a back marker through Sheen Curve for the third place driver Chris Bridle. That's Stephen Ferd in 10th place going another lap down. But yeah, if Towler doesn't look as though he's going to be massively quicker than Bridle, maybe Chris would be better to try and hang on to the position, because he is catching Stockton all on his own. There's no guarantee that Richard Towler going through will actually to an increase in pace. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is an interesting conundrum here. What happened to Julian Thomas? David Denya's gone past him. Julian Thomas is in the pit lane. Julian Thomas, that's big drama then. He was running in fifth position. Just given that place away to Richard Towler a lap or so ago, and now he's in the pits with an obvious problem. I don't know what it might be, but unfortunately for Thomas, this is going to drop him further down the order.
That's a real shame for Julian Thomas, because he was a part of this battle. Really, he wasn't far behind it at all. But clearly, when we've been watching more of this battle, something has happened to him. I'm just going to see if I can find out exactly what has happened there to Julian Thomas. But that is a real shame. What it has done is put David Denya now up into fifth. But it just seems it wasn't meant to be for the Race Logic cars this evening.
No, it's been a bit of a race to forget for them, hasn't it, really? But that takes some of the pressure off Richard Towler to try and attack Chris Bridle, who I'm told by Ed Bridle that he will not let him through. Ed has left a comment on the Twitch stream saying there's no way he's letting him through. So, yeah, I think we've got a race on our hands here. Richard Towler's going to have to work hard for this third place. And to be fair, you can see why Bridle wouldn't let him through, because, as I said, they are still catching Stockton, even with Bridle ahead. So why let him go? And Chris Bridle actually might have the pace to catch second place anyway. He's got his headlights on, which, as we know, is worth a good 0.3 of a second a lap, which is why the drivers insist on flashing headlights at drivers in front of them that they think they're quicker than. But they're absolutely nose to tail now as they come out of Stirling's corner. This is building up very nicely as we approach the final 15 minutes.
Yeah, we have got another battle going on a little bit further back with Steve Walton trying to catch John Eiley. So we'll check in with that after this. But we must stay with this for now, because it is for a podium place. And here comes Towler. He's about to come down the inside. Now, does Bridle defend? No, he's going to let him go through, it seems, as well. So Towler goes through, and Bridle has done exactly the same as what we saw Julian Thomas do earlier. And that is allow Richard Towler to go through and now get in the tow. So I can't remember what you said, Andy, but were you right? Was that 3 in a row? Or I don't even know if we gave an answer to that one. But anyway, our question has been answered. Towler allowed through, and now he's going to go after Pierce Stockton ahead.
Well, see, Ed Bridle was telling us there was absolutely no way he was going to let him through. And if he's just said if he does let him through, there might be an unplanned driver change, because he might be that miffed at his brother giving away the place. He feels the need to jump in himself. So I'm not convinced that was intentional on the part of Chris Bridle. I don't think he meant to let Towler through. I think Towler just had the run and went for it.
I think he did. I'm going to go against you there. I think he did, because, yeah, look, he's in the tow now. So the gap up ahead, Bridle's done a little bit of the work there. He's got the gap down to below 2 seconds, but Towler can help him do the rest. 2 cars working is better than these two fighting with each other. So I'd say he maybe did let him go through, but it wasn't as obvious as the last one, was it?
I'm prepared to believe you. In fairness, it's definitely the sensible thing to do, because they are now catching Pierce Stockton a little bit quicker, dare I say it, now that Towler is ahead. And if Towler can pull this off and get back into second place, then that is a really, really good performance. I know he didn't fall quite as far down the order in this one as he did at Anglesey a few weeks ago, but nonetheless, it's been a really good recovery drive, this. And if he finishes in second place, he will only score 5 points fewer than Riley Phillips. That's before we apply that 2-point bonus for fastest lap. I don't know whether you've got the fastest lap information with you, Chris, but that would be useful to know, because you'd have to imagine that one of those two, either Riley or Richard, have set fastest lap in this one. And if it is Richard, then of course he'd only drop 3 points potentially to Riley. So all of a sudden, what was looking like being a really bad result for Richard as far as his championship's concerned, actually isn't going to be a huge disaster after all.
No, not at all. I think this is what Richard has been best at. We've come into now the last 15 minutes of the race, and there we can see second place just ahead of him. So as we are in, let's do a quick run through of the order. So we'll start by going to our race leader, who we haven't seen a lot of so far. It's Riley Phillips, of course, who is leading the race by some 18 seconds now. So he leads the way. All he has to do is stay on track, which sometimes is not an easy thing around Brands Hatch. And it's harder to go slower. So Riley's just going to be keeping up a consistent pace. And I'm told that he's going around 6 to 7 tenths faster than Piers Stockton some laps, and I think he's 3 tenths quicker than anyone out there on circuit. Second place is Piers Stockton, but for how long is the question, because not too far behind, within a second, there is Richard Towler in third place. Fourth place is Chris Bridle. I keep forgetting who's in the car. Of course, it is Chris. Ed did the 24-hour. David Denyer is in fifth place and is in a world of his own at the moment. In fifth, has some traffic to keep him company for a corner or so. John Tomlinson is in sixth place. Bit of an eventful race for him so far. Jay Shepherd, likewise, he is in seventh place. He has a chance to get sixth, though. He's trying to chase down John Tomlinson, so we'll keep an eye on that one as we get into the final 10 minutes. John Eiley is in eighth place. Steve Walton is in ninth place, and Julian Thomas is back out on track, and he is in 10th place. Maybe track cuts saw him come into the pits. Then we have Chris Hart. He is in 11th place. Not been a good race for him so far. John Hode is in 12th place coming into this with absolutely no practice, and Ed Worthington is in the pits. And that is a run through as we come up to the final 10 minutes, Andy.
Yep, and still the question remains, who is going to be winning Riley Phillips on the podium and in what order? Because Piers Stockton and Richard Towler are almost together now. Under 13 minutes remaining here in round number 4 of the virtual Funcup UK series. On board with Richard Towler, he is the one doing the chasing, which has been his familiar situation over the last couple of races, leaving himself plenty of work to do, but it does make life entertaining for us as we chart his progress, still working away at the wheel. And of course, as the race goes on, the car definitely will be changing. The fuel will be burning off, so the car's getting lighter. The tyres will be wearing down, so he's got a bit less grip. So the feel and the balance of the car is a lot different now than it was at the start of the race. But Richard Towler's commitment has not changed a bit. He is still pushing hard. Dips 2 wheels onto the grass there coming out of Sterling's and just loses a bit of forward traction, but he is almost close enough now start thinking about having a go for second place. Out across the start-finish line they go once again. One more lap is in the books. We're on board now with Stockton, looking back at Richard Towler in third, which all went wrong for Richard on the start of the second lap of the race. And the angle that he's dancing that car at the apex of the corner, beggars belief, but some brilliant car control on display here from both of them, really. See, though, can't you? The attitude of that 666 car, Richard Towler in third place, is very aggressive. It's very racy. He wants to get through, and he wants to do it as quickly as possible. Chris, he's got 11 and a quarter minutes still to go, and not any chance realistically of catching Riley Phillips. So in a way, Richard can, I'm not saying he will, but he can take his time over this, can't he?
Yeah, probably for the first time in this race as well. You can see Bridle is 2.5 seconds back. Bridle is just going to hope that Richard goes for this and that Piers defends all the way to the flag, and that will bring him back into play. One thing I will say is Piers has no track cuts left, so he's got to be very careful. Of course, one thing in sim racing is the limits aren't as they usually would be when you're at the track itself. You can cut the track in places and not damage the car or not spin. You do get warnings for cutting the track or for going over track limits. That is registered by the physics engine of the game. And there are no warnings left for Pierce, so he's got to be careful as it looks like it's about to kick off now as they come up towards clearways here with just over 10 minutes remaining.
Richard Towler's on him now. He's forcing Stockton to drive defensively. That could slow Pierce down on the exit of the corner, but actually pretty equal off the turn. Towler's back in the toe again, though, and you can see visibly here the effect that slipstream has. There's no way that Pierce is giving him the inside line for Paddock Hill Benz. Towler goes to the outside into the right-hander. On the previous lap, he was 4/10 of a second quicker. He can't go around the outside, cuts to the inside there. That was an absolutely textbook switchback manoeuvre. That's one of the best ways to overtake here at Brands Hatch. Force the driver in front to defend into Paddock, and then they'll run wide, but now running wide out of Druids is Towler. And he's off! Richard Towler, for the second time, is off the road. And this time he has hit the barriers. Stockton goes back through into second. Idle goes back through into third. And Richard Towler down to fourth. Well, I didn't quite catch what happened. I'm imagining that was just one of those situations where coming off the corner, Stockton drifted out wide, just tagged Richard, and off into the barriers went Towler. But, wow, Richard so nearly had the job done. And now he's only got 9 minutes left to try and get himself not only back onto the tail of Pierce Stockton, but first of all, back ahead, Chris Bridle.
I will be corrected by Andrew, I'm sure, if I'm wrong, but that looked like to me that he just did it all on his own. He just seemed to get the car out of shape coming out of Druids and just seemed to lost control. I don't know if as he came back across the circuit that he then hit into Stockton, but that appeared to me as if that was just a simple mistake from Towler going in up the inside into Druids, being off the racing line, and just seemed to rev up the car a little bit too much. But what this does do is makes things very interesting once again, doesn't it? It's just over a second to Bridle. He's got a task on his hands now, Richard Towler. He's really got to push things because he can still do this. He can still get a podium, but he's only got 8 minutes to try and do it now.
And that's the thing. And had he just settled back in third, I would have fancied his chances a bit more. But he's back behind Chris Bridle again, who is going to work doubly as hard this time, I'm sure, to keep in mind. I don't think at this stage of the race that Chris Bridle is going to move over and let Richard Towler back through, because it didn't really work, that did it, for Chris Bridle. He let Towler go about 10 minutes ago, and then Towler drove away from him. So I don't think he's going to wave him through again on the off chance that this time they can work together to catch Pierce Stockton, the pair of them. So I think the first overtake Towler has to do is going to be a challenge. And then he's got to try and catch Pierce Stockton again. But yeah, you're right. In theory, that he's got the time to do it. But this next overtake is crucial. He really needs to get past Bridle within the next lap or so. Otherwise, Pierce Stockton might just be too far up the road.
One thing I will say is sometimes in sim racing, the contact doesn't have to be, you can make contact without physically making contact. That might sound strange, but the car, you don't actually have to see the two cars hitting each other for there to be contact, if that makes sense. If you can get within a certain range, sometimes the physics of the game will register contact, even if we don't physically see two cars touching each other. It can be referred to as a net code in sim racing. So that may have been the case, even though it may have not looked like Pierce made contact with Richard. There may have been some in the game. I hope that made some sort of sense. Did that make sense at all, Andy?
3 months ago, it wouldn't have done, but yeah, that's part of this new language that I've sort of been learning over. The way I heard it explained best, I think, was fairly recently, actually, and that was in an online race, if you're 2 car lengths behind the car in front, one of those car lengths is being taken up by the World Wide Web. And you kind of have to give yourself just that little bit more room over the car you're trying to race with, just in case. It won't happen all the time. It depends how strong both of your internet connections are, but just on the off chance, it sometimes is better to be a bit more cautious. But, caution, I think, is about to go back out of the window because they've all caught each other again. And look at the way that Chris Bridle has reeled in Pierce Stockton. That gap is under a second now as well. So as Towler is clambering all over the rear wing of the driver we're on board with now, Chris Bridle down through Graham Hill Bend. So Chris is also sniffing an opportunity of snatching that second place away. So this is all still to play for here. The last thing Chris wants to be doing right now is defending from Richard. That's exactly what he has to do through Surtees. And now on the exit corner, they both will tuck into the slipstream of the respective cars in front of them. I think these gaps are going to keep on coming down. Second, third, and fourth places, 5.5 minutes to go, less than a second covering the three of them. This is Funcup racing at its best.
It is. This is what we were talking about. The racing always gets that little bit closer. We have that little halftime interval where we had a great chat with Andrew. And now we are back to what is a classic Funcup race. As we can look back from Bridle here, we can see Towler not far away at all, and only half a second back from Pierce Stockton is the car that we are on board with. So this is going to be a fantastic final 5 minutes to this race now, as Towler is going to be desperate to get through as quickly as possible.
They're all together now as they head underneath the bridge into clearways once again. Running out of time, though, into the final 5 minutes. Chris Hart is just ahead of them to go another lap down as well, which will be the last thing that any one of these three drivers really wanted to see. They couldn't be any closer. Look at this. It's like a 12-wheel Funcup car coming across the start-finish line into Bannakill Bend, and Bridle looked to the outside of Stockton. Towler didn't know where to go then. He was trying to go to the outside of Bridle, but Bridle was committing to a move on Stockton, and it's Towler that's quicker off Bannakill Bend. He goes to the outside. They could be three abreast into Druids. There's not quite room for that, but Richard Towler has gone to the outside line. He's got some clear track ahead of him, and he should be able to pick up at least one of these positions. He has. He goes round the outside of Bridle and picks up third place. He had the inside line for Graham Hill Bend if he needed it, but actually he'd driven ahead of Bridle before they got to the braking zone. Chris will, I'm sure, try and fight back here. He's almost pushing Richard into Surtees' corner. This battle ain't over yet.
No, really fantastic stuff, this. So that's one down. There is now one more to go here for Richard Towler. As we look back now from Pierce Stockton, there you can see Richard Towler, but there you can also see Bridle as well pulling out of the toe. Is he going to try and pull off a move here into Hawthorns? I think he's just trying to see whereabouts he is. He's got two cars ahead of him trying to find his braking zone. Here we are looking back from Pierce. We can see Richard Towler looking left, looking right, can't quite find a way through. Richard going just a little bit wide, but Pierce doing likewise. And as you said, a great reference there. We've got a 12-wheeling Funcup car coming up towards Westfield Corner now. Fantastic stuff here in the Funcup Virtual UK Series. So through Sheen Curve they go now and towards Sterling's. Fantastic stuff this. Pierce Stockton, it couldn't be any closer between these three with 3 minutes to go.
Ran wide there through Sterling's zone. That's compromised his exit, and so Towler's back alongside into clearways, takes the wide line in. He's setting up for the switchback, but what he didn't factor was Chris Bridle coming back up the inside. That so nearly worked for Towler. He was nearly into second, but he's ended up losing third again to Chris Bridle, who is back through, and now he's onto the tail of Pierce. Stockton goes to the inside into Bannakill Bend, side by side for second place with only a couple of laps to go, and somehow Stockton hangs on. Bridle drifts wide, and here comes Richard Towler again. As soon as you go for a move, if it doesn't work, the risk is that the car behind you will take advantage, and that's what happened to both Bridle and Towler there. Twice within three corners, the middle car in this trio tried to make a move and actually ended up losing ground. So it's back to how you were now. Stockton second, Towler third, Chris Bridle in fourth place. But this battle, I think, Chris, is going to run right down to the checkered flag, because I don't think anyone's going to be able to escape from anybody else now. They're all pretty evenly matched. That slipstream is going to keep them right together, I think, until the fall of the checkered flag.
Yeah, when you get in this situation, you know, you can get away with being a couple of tenths slower a lap. That doesn't really matter. You can see Piers has just pulled away a little bit from Richard. He made a mistake there going through Surtees, but he'll make up for that now as they go down the straight. But now they are all back together once again. You can see Piers just running slightly wide there as Bridle in the background. He's almost, that's the worst place to be, at the back of the queue, because you've got to wait for the guy ahead to make a move. You know, if you make the move first and the guy at the head of the queue is going to get away, it's the easiest position to be where Pierce Stockton is, because he can either just defend from both cars. Being in the middle is always tricky. It's when you make your move for that second place now for Richard Towler as they come down towards the final corner. He's going to look to the outside here. Piers defending coming into the final corner. Bridle has just dropped away a little bit as Riley has gone on to the last lap. So this will be the last lap of the race now, Andy, and any one of these three could take second place.
It's another one of those Funcup races you don't really want to end, because this fight for second place, it may be going on the best part of half a minute behind the race leader, but it is absolutely enthralling. Richard Towler sideways again through Paddock Hill Bend. He's going to lose that second place surely to Chris Bridle. There's a car parked to the side of the road there, which is not going to make the flag, but these three, well, hopefully they will all make the checkered flag in one piece. They are starting to get a bit scrappy. There are a couple of mistakes being made. Still, any one of these three drivers could come home in second place. Piers Stockton finished second at Anglesey last time. He was third in the round before that at Snetterton as well. So he's on a good run here. Richard Towler, though, still trying to get himself back on the podium. He's up the inside of Chris Bridle. He's sideways, and this is absolute music to the ears of Piers Stockton, who for the first time in the best part of 10 minutes is pulling away. He's for a second ahead of them now, because these two are really starting to delay each other. They're side by side again into Hawthorne. Bridle on the inside, defending and hanging on to third.
Yep, fantastic stuff. Bridle defending, just going round the outside. There was Towler, just a little bit of contact. And is that Towler going all the way round the outside? He's going to have to go round the outside here once again. And he think he's been able to do it. Yes, he has. So Bridle is going to be behind going into the final few corners. Bridle is going to try and go back up the inside. So what's this streak? Oh, there's Towler. He's off. A slight bit of contact. And that's going to be Bridle going into third. Up the road, Riley Phillips, he's come across the line. And he's going to take round 4 victory. Going back to Piers Stockton in second place after that battling going on behind. He's coming around the final corner now, Andy, and it's been an eventful race, but I think he's just going to wrap up second.
Yeah, that battle going on behind him between Bridle and Towler has handed it to him. So for the third race in a row, Piers Stockton's on the podium. Don't count him out for the championship at this rate. Chris Bridle comes home in third, and Richard Towler fourth. Well, I mean, you can try and go around the outside of one corner. That's brave. Go around the outside at 2 corners, it started to get quite risky. But honestly, trying to go around the outside in 3 consecutive corners is kind of asking for trouble. And I was amazed that they stayed off each other as long as they did. But finally, through Sheen Curve, there was contact, and Towler on the outside was always going to be the one that ended up in the gravel, and that's exactly what did happen. David Denyer has come home in 5th place, by the way. Jay Shepherd in 6th. John Eiley should be 7th. Julian Thomas 8th, and then Stephen Ferd and John Tomlinson. If I know John Tomlinson not running anymore, so Stephen Ferd might be the last car still running at the flag. Riley Phillips does celebratory donuts on the Grand Prix loop as the last couple of cars come through, and at the end, Chris, that's worked out rather nicely for Riley Phillips. He gets the race win, and Towler ends up 4th, and Richard will be massively frustrated at that, because it could so easily have been second place, and actually it ends up being 4th position, and that's the best part of 10 less points that he scored for 4th. He would have done for second. So not a good day at the office for Richard Towler.
Not at all. I think it's time to go. Let's go straight and get some reaction. Let's head down to the Team M3M chat. We've got Riley Phillips and Piers Stockton in there, the drivers who finished first and second. We'll go and chat to them now. Hi, guys. Chris McCarthy and Andy McEwen here. Piers and Riley, how are you doing? Riley, we'll speak to you first. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, man, a few words. Well, you didn't much in the race, really, did you? It was a fairly straightforward race.
Yeah, I mean, pole to the line. Fairly straightforward. I did have to be fairly consistent, though. Piers was putting in some quick laps during quali and practice, so I was having to be wary of that in case he started really banging the laps in. But yeah, fairly straightforward race, really.
And feels good to take a win. You know, championship-wise, it was neck and neck coming into this. So a win, that's all good for the championship, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's very good. I think I might have got a fastest lap as well, although I'm not sure. So yeah, that should be good points for that.
Have you been doing a lot of practice coming up to this? Because you seemed in your element round there today.
Not really, no. I mean, Brands is one of my favourite tracks from the first time I went there. In real life, it was fantastic. And it's just as brilliant on the sim as well. So, yeah.
Great stuff. Well, congratulations, Andy. I'll hand over to you now as we'll chat with Piers Stockton in second.
Yeah, Piers, well done. Second race in a row, and that you're in second place, but it wasn't easy. I dare say it wasn't quite as easy a race for you as it seems like it was for Riley.
Yeah, definitely not. I'd start by just apologising to Richard. I think he was We had a couple of coming together, and they were like it felt like the tiniest of touches, but it sent him flying off into the barrier. Yeah, I feel bad.
Well, I mean, that's part of racing, especially sim racing, isn't it? Sometimes the margins are so tight. It doesn't take away from the fact that you defended really well there to keep hold of second place towards the end. What were you thinking in those last 10 minutes when you saw that Richards was catching you and he was bringing Chris with him as well?
Oh, it just felt like I'd got 2 rabid dogs chasing me.
That's a pretty accurate description. I think it's not a nice feeling, is it, though, when you can see they're catching and they get that slipstream, and then that last sort of 0.8 of a second or so just disappears in a flash, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I'd got 3 or 4 seconds on him to start with, and as soon as that had disappeared to about a second, yeah, the pressure was on.
It's hard to run side by side around this place as well, isn't it? But if you can place the car in the right positions defensively and kind of play them against each other, that can sometimes, as it did for you, work in your favour.
Yeah, it can do. Worked in my favour a tiny little bit today.
Well, congrats.
Hey, Chris, are you able to talk?
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Do you want
Sorry,
to,
my mic was on mute, so I was scrabbling around to turn it on.
Chris? Can you jump into the team M3M chat, because all the commentators are in there and Riley and Richard are in there.
That one, yeah?
Yeah.
It'll be 2 seconds. I'm just quitting a set of course, and then I will join that.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. Cheers. I guess I will speak to you in a bit, John.
Yeah, enjoy your post-race interview.
I crashed into about half the grid, so if you're interested.
Jump on as well, John, if you want to have a chat. It's fine.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm not on the podium, so you don't want to talk to me.
No, we can always have a chat, see what you thought.
Okay. Which chat room is it?
Team M3M.
I'll see if I can competently IT my way there.
I'm in their chat, asking them to come in.
A battle at the end there, between all 3 of us, we were overtaking each other every
Am I talking over the top?
Oh, hello. Who have we got? We got Andrew there. So carry on, Richard.
I know how just saying it was a really good race, and it was a good run with Ed as well. He was sticking it in there and having a good fight.
Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, it seems you had that drama at the beginning, but from then it was a fairly busy race. You always seem to be chasing someone down.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't as quick as well. I would say I wasn't as consistent as probably I should have been, but I was struggling with the changes to the car. But Riley did a much better job adjusting, and I had no chance beating him today. But it was a good battle trying to come back to get a top 3 at the end there.
Ah, good stuff. Yeah, that's a shame. But I mean, a really good fun race. That's what this championship is all about, isn't it? It's to fill that that gap while we aren't racing, and you certainly lived up to that today. There was a lot of racing in that race.
Oh, there was a lot of racing, and that's what we're here for, just to race, and we're all good, we're all clean, so we had a few contacts, but it was just it was contact from risks that you make with online racing, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah.
And in terms of, have you seen the tracks we got coming up? Is there any you're looking forward to, in particular?
So a track with lots of braking, because that's where I make a lot of my time up. Like, we're braking into sharp corners, but I don't think we've got any of those left. So,
well, you've taken advantage of it certainly while we've been in the first few tracks, but you've had the great experience of fighting back through the field twice now. I'm sure you just want a much straightforward race next time.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no complaints, but I'd like to have a good, solid, race at the front. But it just doesn't seem to happen that way at the moment.
Good stuff. Well, I am going to ask Piers to just come back on for a second, because I think the virtual microphone may have been away from us while we were chatting to him. So hopefully we'll be.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right, Andrew. What basically happened to make it sound a little bit more. Basically, we were chatting to Piers, and the microphone walked away from us, if you like. So that's kind of what happened in real terms. But Andy, looks like we've got our.
I was told to go and get Chris, so I did, and I thought the stream would stay with you guys, so I Cocked it up. Sorry.
That's
Hey,
okay.
Learning all the time.
Should we speak to Mr. Bridle now, Andy?
I don't think that's a bad idea. Evening, Chris. How you doing?
Very well, thanks yourself.
Yeah, not bad. All better for enjoying some typical Funcup action. I mean, it must have felt at times in the final 10 minutes or so of that race, especially that we were back to real racing, because that was proper Funcup stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really good actually. I mean, I saw Richard coming, and with his pace from the back, I thought, oh, I'll just let him drag me up to Piers. And that sort of worked, and we sort of started scrapping. And then on the last lap, yeah, it was just really close. It was just, Richard had to go around the outside, and I just literally just bounced off the curb a bit wrong, and it caused a bit of like side-to-side contact. But yeah, up until then, it was a really good race, I thought, and yeah, wasn't much to it at all.
We were getting comments throughout the race from your brother, who's awake after his Le Mans stints that he did over the last 24 hours or so. And he was saying that if you let Richard through, then there might be a sort of unplanned driver change. He wasn't a big fan of that strategy, but it did kind of work for you, didn't it, in the end? Letting Richard through sort of allowed you both to work together.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, he crashed twice at Le Mans, so I'll give him a little prod there. So, no, yeah, it was a sensible thing to do. I didn't have the pace to do it on my own, so as soon as Richard got past, it just makes sense to sort of try and drag up to the back of Piers, which sort of worked out in the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you had those couple of moments at Le Mans there. What does he know, eh? I think you had a cleaner race than him today, so I think that's bragging rights between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting to me, though, actually, that whole idea of drivers working together and two cars being quicker than one, that's absolutely something that has been brought into the Assetto Corsa sort of mod that we're using. Absolutely is a factor in the real racing as well, isn't it? That's what a lot of Funcup racing is about, is finding people that you can work with. Two cars are faster than one.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was racing karting, I'm sure like Riley will know, and Piers and stuff through the karting stuff. Because I remember we used to do like 20-minute races, and you'd sit behind someone for 15, 18 minutes of the race, and you would only start making moves at the end of the race, because there's no point scrapping from sort of lap 2, lap 3. Because it's just going to harm you. If you can sort of work together, get a gap, then start scrapping, it always usually works out a bit better. So yeah, and again, it happens in real Funcup as well. So yeah, good result, but yeah, it's just hard work. It's a bit hot.
Yeah, it is. It's surprisingly physical with this sim racing thing, but I'll let you go in a moment. One more question, though. The calendar obviously has been released, the provisional calendar, at least for what's left of the real 2020 season, and a couple of interesting races on there. We've got this return to the 2-race format at Snetterton, and then we go to Thruxton. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to that.
No, yeah, it should be a good one, actually. I'm not actually racing this year, I don't think, at the moment, for Funcup. So, yeah, but I'll definitely take a trip down to Thruxton if spectators are allowed. Cause I think, yeah, Funcup cars around Thruxton will be carnage. And I think the racing will be great with the big slipstreams there. So, yeah, I think it's going to be sort of a good short calendar. And, yeah, hopefully the racing's really good.
Stuff. Shame to hear you won't be out there, but hopefully we haven't seen the last of you in a Funcup car. We certainly looking forward
hopefully
to
not.
No, absolutely. No, you and your brother both have been fantastic additions to the championship. So, in the meantime, we'll enjoy watching you race in the virtual series, and yeah, hopefully more podium success in the future.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
There you go, then, Chris Bridle with support, advice, and assistance from his brother. So it sounds from home, coming home with a second place there, Chris.
Good stuff. I'll repeat Andy's question actually to John. I know you're in the chat with us as well. How are you looking forward to things coming up? And how did you find the race as well?
Yeah, the race was a bit messy at the start. I got a bit involved in the run up to Druids, and I think I was probably dead last or close to it. I had a bit of work to do after that, but just tried to be consistent and drive within my hardware and software capabilities, and just happy to bring it home at the end.
Yeah, I mean, always a fantastic race. But just repeating what Andy said, you know, the Funcup calendars come out. What are you making of the Thruxton edition?
I'm curious as to whether the tyres are going to last around there, or how many pit stops we might have to have. But for me, with my aero background, I like any tracks where it becomes a slipstreaming battle, and I think Silverstone National and hopefully Thruxton are two places that will absolutely play into those hands.
Good stuff. Looking forward to seeing you there. I know Andy, I believe you'll be there. But thanks for being with us once again. Round 5 is going to be on the 5th of July, so we hope to see you back for that one.
Thanks, really enjoyed it.
Good stuff. Piers, I'll go ahead. I'll hand back over to Andy. We'll finish by chatting to yourself because I think our virtual microphone may have not been with you whilst we were chatting to you.
We spoke to you earlier, Piers, but we need you to repeat word for word everything you said to me about 10 minutes ago. Do you think you can do that?
I just apologised for the contact with Richard. It was really, really tough race once the guys caught up. After being 3 or 4 seconds clear of them, when they got to within a second, it was like having 2 rabid dogs behind me just chasing me. It was really, really tough, and very, very hot in my room.
Everyone's saying that, it's this unseasonably warm weather we're having. It's just far too warm for June in England, isn't it? The racing, though, as close as we've sort of come to expect. One question I didn't ask you the first time we spoke, but I've time to think of better questions now. Why did that gap start coming down so sort of quickly in the final third of the race? Because it looked like you were keeping them all at arm's length, and then they just started reeling you in. Was that anything to do with the tyre wear, perhaps?
Possibly. It's just so easy to make a mistake. Really easy to make a mistake and lose time around the track. It's. I found it quite a difficult track, although I quite like it.
It's unforgiving, isn't it? And the Grand Prix loop in particular is very fast, so you've kind of got to be committed. But then the more committed you are, the more risk there is you're going to dip a wheel on the grass and start losing time.
Yeah. So towards the end, I was I was struggling for track limits. So I was trying to be really, really careful not to make any mistakes.
Which is a lot easier said than done, especially when you've got those two breathing down your neck. But a good fun race, nonetheless. And as a few drivers have said to us whilst we've chatted to them tonight, really reminiscent of the kind of action that we see on a regular basis in the real world championship. One of the things I've been most impressed about with this mod that Riley's worked on for Assetto Corsa is how much of the stuff we see in the real championship that really has been translated into the sim as well.
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job. I mean, obviously, seeing the races from the garages and then seeing it on the sim, it's very similar, very similar.
Absolutely, and it whets our appetite quite nicely for the resumption of Funcup racing at Snetterton in August. So yeah, we're all very much looking forward to it, and congratulations on the good result, and thanks for putting on a show for us, Piers.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you.
There we go then. I think we got him that time, Chris.
Yep, I think so, and it wasn't quite word for word, but it will do.
We'll allow it.
Yeah. Just this time, we'll finish. We'll finish with Riley. We'll come back to you once again. Riley, how pleased are you with how things have turned out? We're in round 4 now. A fantastic race once again. How pleased were you? How pleased are you with how things have turned out? It was just an idea this you had, and now it's turned into a fantastic championship with 4 very good races.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic so far. I'm super happy that people are enjoying it and wanting to compete in it more as time goes on. But yeah, I couldn't really think of anything else I'd want to be doing in the several months of racing we've had off. Yeah, it's just it's not quite as good as the real thing, but it's a very good substitute.
Who'd have thought you'd be spending Father's Day this year running a championship with your dad? How about that?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
It's not bad at all, is it? It's not the norm. Like, if you'd said that to someone, they go, "Oh, okay, fair enough." But yeah, I'd say it's been fantastic. And tell us what we got coming up next time.
So I think we're going to do a quick switch with the calendar since we're not going to Mondello anymore. We're going to put in Thruxton instead. It'll be the same date, so it'll still be the 5th of July. But it will be Thruxton instead of Mondello, which will be interesting considering how obviously we've got Thruxton for the real Funcup coming up soon as well.
Good stuff. And what about the European Series?
European Series is still going to be the same. There's going to be no changes there. So I believe it is Lebanon is the next race.
And that's
next week.
Yes, I was going to say that.
28th. Yeah.
Yes, that is next weekend. Andy, it's been great to have you back. Are you going to be back with us again next time? Or are you going to
if you'll have me. No, I hope I will be. Yeah, it's like I said at the start of the broadcast, I miss Funcup racing when I'm away from it for too long. So yeah, hopefully if my diary allows, which I think it does, then yeah, I'd love to be back, because it doesn't matter how many championships I work on around the world, how many sim racing championships I've had the privilege to work with recently. There's just something about Funcup racing and the Funcup family that really appeals to me. So yeah, hopefully I'll be back, and hopefully racing will be every bit as entertaining as it has been tonight. I've got a funny feeling it probably will be.
Good stuff. Well, as Riley said, 5th of July is next. Struxton, it is. Hope you've all enjoyed watching. Happy Father's Day, Andrew. And thanks again for putting on a brilliant show for us, along with Riley and all the drivers out there. And yes, I believe that's it. We're back next week for the European Series. But round 5 of the UK will be 5th of July from Thruxton.